Okay, so I'll walk you through this. It's incredibly easy. It's not very hard. It's just a few things that if you don't do them exactly right, it doesn't work. So long story short, the Dymo printer is what you do have to use. In fact, I believe there was only 3 actual printers that you could use from the Dymo line as well. So I know it was a 450, a 450 turbo, and then there was some type of a wireless option you could get. Planning Center made it pretty obvious you had to use the printers that they specified. Additionally, you have to have some sort of a main station set up. So we use either a laptop. Right now I'm using my Surface. There has to be a main station that's connected via USB to that printer to print from. Outside of that, setup for the printer itself is pretty easy. It does come with a couple discs, and if I remember correctly, when we used the disc for your Mac, it didn't work correctly. Is that right? We had to go download it. So the discs that we tried to use to pull the drivers off of didn't work for us. We actually had to go to dymo.com, then go to the support and download the actual drivers. And so that's what I've done here. And so I'll just show you. It's absolutely the easiest thing ever to install it. You literally just install the driver itself. It'll ask you one question, and from that point on, you're just clicking next. There's nothing you have to know specifically to do it. It'll go through its process and kind of finish that out. While we're waiting for that to finish, you do have to make sure that when you're setting all of this up, that you have a main workstation that's going to stay there, and that's going to be the actual, what we refer to it as the mothership, as ridiculous as that sounds, because it has to print via USB to this printer itself. So whatever station you're going to use has to have the printing software onto it. And so you can switch different things out, like we use the children's director, we use her laptop, we'll be using a desktop at some point. Whatever is going to be the main station has to have this software on it at all times. That's the only way that it'll be able to talk with this to here. As soon as this is done, the printer setup is basically done. And there's a way you can test to make sure everything's working correctly, and we'll do that here in a moment. But it's not really rocket science. That's a pretty easy thing to set up. This is about to finalize, and as soon as it does, you just hit finish, and it'll add a little icon to the bottom. And so if you want to zoom in here, Cristiano, just to get an idea, are you good? Okay. So this will either pop up on your desktop, or at least you'll be able to find it in your start menu. This is just kind of the program for the actual printer itself. You won't ever use this at all when you're using Planning Center. This is just the actual software for the printer. Find out what type of label you use. We use shipping label. Am I correct on that? Okay. So pretty much on this side little menu here, it gives you label types. You'll just go scroll down until you find the label type that you use, and I went too far. Here we are. You'll just highlight the type of label that you use. So for us, we use shipping. They have different options here, but right now you're not really worried about that. Just basically, you're going to click on the type of label you use and then print, just to make sure that the software that is on the computer is talking to the printer itself. And this way you don't get too far into the process and realize it was not done right from the beginning. So you'll hit print, and then voila, we get a label. So when that's done, up comes the next part. Also, not very hard whatsoever, but it's probably the most important part. So we used Chrome initially, and for some reason we had problems with Chrome pulling up an extension, and I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit here. But there will be an extension that should pop up that asks if that browser can allow a Dymo plugin to work. You have to hit yes. If you do not hit yes, the browser can't tell the printer to print, and then you're pretty much dead in the water from that point on. So we'll go on here. Like I said, Chrome we had problems with. They may have fixed it by now, but at least 3 weeks ago when we tried to do it, it didn't allow a plugin to actually even be recognized. So we had to use Mozilla, Firefox, or Internet Explorer. Safari worked fine as well. So I'm going to go in here and use Firefox for the time being. Firefox. There we go. Okay, when that's done, load into the browser and go ahead and get into the check-in portion. And as soon as that loads up, we get to the next part of the check-in. Hey, I didn't hit check-in. Okay, so the check-in aspect is not very hard at all, but you do have to make sure you do a few things or it won't actually work correctly. So now we're into this. This opens up the main section of check-ins, and check-in is really simple to use actually. It's slightly frustrating at first because you don't think things make sense, but they kind of do. It's just you're not entirely quite familiar with how it works exactly yet. So the most important part right off the bat is making sure you have some sort of an event in there. The event is really kind of important because unless you have certain number of things set up in that event, you can't check in at all. Like it will not allow you to check in. So we're going to go ahead and just add an event so that way you kind of know how to do it. So we'll click, if you notice on the right in this right hand area, there's an add event button. You click add event, and then you'll name the event. So like for instance, on our Sunday morning check-ins, we have, I believe it's labeled Sunday morning check-in, or it's weekend check-ins, or it's something that's designated obviously that we know at the check when the person comes up here to open up our check-in station, she knows what she's clicking on. So you create a new event. You have to make some sort of a name in here. We went with trial demo. I don't know why we went with trial demo because, and actually I didn't even spell trial, I spelled Trollo. There, you know what, doesn't even matter. We're gonna go with demo vid. How's that? Wonderful. Okay, demo vid. Demo vid is the name of the event. You have to have an event in there. You cannot check anyone in. Second part is the weekly or none. And so all that does is just means when we set up the time, does demo vid happen weekly or is it just a one-time deal? And so you can set that regarding whatever event you're doing. The next important part is this label option. You want to make sure it says DIMO on both of these. It doesn't matter if it's name or security. So the first default name is just it'll print out a label with the child's name on it. The default security prints out a label with a number that will be added to the child's name, so that way the parents would get that one. You can make them both name labels if you want. It doesn't really matter as long as it just says DIMO on it. If it doesn't say DIMO, you can tell right away we already have a problem with the printer talking to the computer. And then you can also change the number of tags that get printed out. So if you want both parents to have a tag, you can print 2. If you want just one parent, or vice versa, it doesn't really matter the number. But that's what that does right there. When you're done, you'll hit submit. And so you should see when this is finalized, it'll pop up. And so the name of the event is demo vid, and it gives you this little section. These two right now aren't going to be a big deal for what we're doing just yet, because the history is going to show as people are checking in. So it's going to show, the times that people are checking in, how if at a particular time you had a lot of people checking in at once, and then at another point there weren't very many people. Right now, that's not going to do anything for you. The people, this will show you who has all checked in for that particular day, and then locations. You can add different locations to set in. So whether you're using it for the children's area, or if children and youth are using it, or if you have different areas or locations that are using it, that'll be right there. What we're going to look at is this part, because if you don't set this part up, you can't check in either. So you have to add a time to it, because the check-in system will only allow for a certain check-in, or for people to check in during a certain time frame. So for Sunday morning, our check-in is from, let's say, 9 a.m. to noon. If someone comes in at 8:45 and tries to check in, it will not allow them. If someone tries to check in at 12:05, it won't allow them. They can only check in between 9 and 12. And so in order for you to be able to check in, you have to set a time period for them to be able to check in. So for instance, we'll make, it's 1:27 right now, so we'll just go ahead and make the check-in time from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, because we're not going to have much more time after this. So now what this says is today's date. You have to make sure the date's correct. That the start time will be at 1 p.m. and the end time is 2 p.m. So it means today I can start checking in at 1 p.m. The times that you can check in will end at 2 p.m. You hit submit, and now we have it set up to where you can check in. Until you've set up a time for check-in, it's just not going to work. It won't allow you to check in. When that's done, the very top corner here, there's a become a station. You'll only use this, actually no, I'm sorry, you'll use that every single time. Give me a moment, we'll get to where Here we go. You can stay signed in or signed out. It doesn't necessarily matter. It'll still allow you to it. I just hit sign in for kicks and giggles.
For the main one, you probably want to keep it as admin, so you want to stay logged in.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, if you're the main person, you'll want to stay as an admin. Good point. So now we're at the point of check-in on this side. I'm going to show you on the tablet, and so that way you get an idea, because the tablet's going to ask you something that's going to be kind of important. So for the tablet, when you need to go ahead and do your check-in system, now I'll show you on the tablet. Two important things is just to make sure, we use Android tablet as our thing, so it does not have an app to it, so you have to use an actual browser. You have to make sure that you put it into desktop mode and not mobile mode, or you won't be able to get to this screen and you will spend pretty much all day walking in circles. So make sure you put it in desktop mode. You can do that in the settings option up in here, and it'll allow this to actually come into desktop mode. Once you have it in desktop mode, this is going to look pretty familiar to what it'll look like on your actual main station. What you will have to do, however, is you will have a little stations button. Now, I have to log in to add a station. But when you're adding in a desktop, when you're adding in a tablet, whether it's the iPad, or actually it really doesn't matter what you're adding in. When you're adding something additional to the main station you have to add each one in as a station. And on top of that, you have to tell it what to print to. Because that's really, really important. If you don't have it printing to the right thing, nothing will print out here at all. And so you may check them in, but you won't get any tags out. So what you'll need to do is you'll come over here to a stations, and this one's already been added to a station, but you'll notice on our stations option here, it shows the stations that are currently there. And so, for instance, like I said, this one we've labeled as the mothership. This one's labeled as the mothership. We have the children's director who uses her laptop. It's called Christina's Mac. And then we have different tablets that we use under this tablet option down here. What you'll have to do, and so I've already set this one up, so I can't reset it up, but I can show you what we did. So for instance, this tablet's set up, and I wish I could show you without this thing coming up here, and I cannot do it. But you'll see right here, it gives you a name the station. It gives you the option to put a theme to it. The important part is this bottom one right, Bob Saget. It's this bottom one right here. Is print labels to. You need to make sure that you're printing labels to whatever you've named this when you first set everything up. So for instance, this is named mothership. You make sure you print it to that actual device. And so when that's done, you'll just hit save. You can come up here to become a station. And now this will actually have you come into your events. You'll pick the event you're on, so make sure you pick the same event. So for instance, we're doing demo vid. You have to make sure you actually hit demo vid in order for you to be on the same event that these two are on. So we demo vid, and now we can actually go ahead and kind of give a little trial here. So for instance, this one should come up with a name already in here, and I'll show you how to add one in real quick, but this one will come up with one that I had set up as demo before. It'll show the people whose names are underneath of that. And so you can type in a phone number or a last name. Doesn't really matter. I used a phone number on this one, and so that phone number is associated with myself, and then a very lazy me who just put my wife as AB. So you'll click on AB, and for demo purposes, I made up that we apparently have a child named Baby B. And so you'll check Baby B in, and when you are done, hit the wrong one. You'll hit check in one person. I've already checked in Baby B when I did this a few seconds ago. We had to reshoot this one. So for instance, when you're done, you'll hit check in. As soon as that's being checked in, it will send to the printer the labels to be printed off. And so this will give you the name of the child. This will give you a code that's on the child's badge as well, so that way the parent can match up if you guys are doing it that way. So
it'll also give you the time and the day, You can also add like what class, like when you check in their location, it'll have the location as well, and then if there's any notes on for the kids, it'll be
Gotcha.
there too.
Yeah, like the allergies and so on. So you can customize whatever you put into this per se, but this will basically print out a child tag and a parent tag. So outside of that, I mean, there's not a whole lot to do. All I'm gonna do is show you now real quick is the difference between the manned station and an unmanned, and then also just how to add someone in. If they happen to come in and you put their phone number or their last name in and they're not there, it's a new person or it's a guest or maybe they just haven't checked in before. So all you have to do for that is we'll go back down here to demo vid. You'll notice there's a difference between the two. This one just has a screen that asks for search by name or phone number. This one has a screen that asks you to input a phone number. When you first set up a new person, is ask for a phone number to begin with. When they check in by themselves, so there's not a person actually manning the station, there's just a tablet that's sitting out here by itself, they're going to check in from a phone number that they put in on their account. If it's a manned station, you can search by their name or their phone number. So I'm going to go ahead and just put in a phone number real quick that I know for a fact there's just no way impossible that we have a phone number underneath of it. So we'll go with 867-5309. No way we have someone with that. Search. Yep, they didn't find anything at all. So at that aspect, generally they're going to have to come over to the man station and have their information put in. So we'll walk over here. They'll give me their phone number again of 867-5309. We'll look. Obviously they're not there. There'll be an option then, let me move this out of the way, to add a new person. You'll just simply click on add a new person. You'll change the phone number to whatever their first name is. So we're going to make the first name as...
Or you can just write their full name.
Correct.
And do it that. And that just already have their names in.
Correct. Give me a person.
Thomas Kingsley. Wait, no, because we have another kid that's last name is Kingsley. Harbor?
Edison.
Thomas
Edison. You want to put Thomas Edison's name. You generally want to go with one of the parents first, and I'll show you that in a second why you want to do that. But you'll put in Thomas Edison. You can put in the birth date. You'll want to make sure that you're clicking one of these two, that it's an adult or it's a child. If you click on the opposite, it's not a massive deal, but when you go to check them in, it looks as though the child is checking in the adult, and it just looks kind of weird. So you'll make sure you just pick whether it's a child or an adult. This is an adult. You can skip most of this if it's the adult. You don't have to worry about putting his birthday or what grade he's in, so on and so forth. These are important. The email address allows you to just obviously send stuff to them. The mobile number is the number they're going to check in with over on the tablet. And so, for instance, theirs is going to be 867-5309, and then you'll add their street. So we'll make it 123 Main. If you put in a street for the parent, it subsequently, when you add a child into it, automatically makes their phone number and their address the same. You can change it if you need to, if the child lives with another adult or anything, but it'll just subsequently make it whatever the adult's address is. So we'll go with Anderson, Indiana.
Actually, it doesn't.
It doesn't?
It doesn't put their phone, like even if you make them the parent, you can just still find them under their household.
Gotcha. And so under household, you'll just need to put that they're joining in.
No, since that's the first person, you just click save person.
This is why I have the children's director behind me as well. You'll notice it has now him. Now if you need to add people to his, right up here in the next hand corner, it's add a person to Thomas Edison's household. And so we'll just add Susie, because that's going to be Thomas Edison's daughter's name, apparently. He was super creative when he came up with her name. So Susie Edison.
You want to specify as a child.
And then at this point, you'll pick a birthday. So let's just go with she was born the beginning of this month. And you have to make sure that you pick child or adult on this. That's really important part of this. So she's a child, and Susie is not in a grade because she's just born. She's a female. At this point, you can write in anything she's allergic to or any medical stuff you have to add. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then, like I said, it brings stuff down into here. in terms of her address and stuff. So when you're done with there, you'll notice it'll automatically put that you add it to the Edison household. You will just hit save person. And so now we have Thomas and his daughter in here. So whenever you need to add someone in again, you can come back over to here, and now when we hit 8, whoopsie, 8, 6, 7, 5, 3, 0, 9, search, we will now get Thomas Edison and his daughter, at which point you'll choose his daughter and tell them that you're checking them in.
And if they have a different parent that checks them in, they can
Yes.
switch who checks them in.
Yes, good point. Yeah, if you have different parents that check in and out, at the bottom here, the check-in by, let's say there was a Diane Edison, that was her mom, you could hit check-in by Thomas Edison, or check-in by Diane. Either way, you can choose who's checking them in, and then when you hit check in one person, it will now fire out Susie's name tag. If you have multiple services, so for instance, we have check-in times for 9 and 10, 10:30. If, let's say you brought them in at 9 and you checked them in, but they're also going to be there for 10:30 and you want to make sure they're also there as well. If you click down here, there will be time options. You can click the additional time then for 10:30 and then be able to print them out another thing as well, or at least it shows that, hey, they're here at 10:30. That way you're getting better attendance records and so on. So outside of that, man, that's it. Really, there's only just 4 important things you have to check to make sure. You have to make sure that this is installed properly. So by doing that, you just go down to the Dymo software and just making sure that in its native form, Dymo is at least being able to print. The next part of that is making sure that you've set up a time, that you have the event set and there's a time and you're checking in within that certain time period. And then the last part of that is making sure that you have enabled the extension to be able to print from the desktop or from the browser to the Dymo unit. And then the fourth one is just making sure that you've set the tablet up to print to the workstation. If you do all 4 of those, it should work perfectly fine. Outside of that, as long as you don't lose internet at any point, it works pretty flawlessly. If you lose internet, yeah, it doesn't work so great. So I hope that helps. If you have any other questions, let me know. Cool.